Welcome back. It's still Rise and Shine Daily. Do not forget, this is coming to you from the studios of Spectrum Television here from the beautiful hills of Ibiakuren. And right about now, we have a guest in our midst.
Yeah, we do have a guest in our midst, and right now we are being joined in this Justus Okon, who is a hybrid professor of communication studies. He is from the faculty of Stanford University. So good to have you, sir.
Thank you.
Sorry for the delay in that citation.
Thank you.
We were just having a conversation about girl-child education and issues surrounding it. Can you let us in on the situation of Nigeria in that regard?
It's a pleasure being here, and thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I think the idea of girl-child education is very personal to me. Personally, I have 4 girls.
Oh my.
And 1 boy, and besides, I have 7 sisters as well. Sisters. so I know a lot about the impact and living with girls.
Okay.
But specifically, girl-child education to me is one of the one of the negative isms. You know, as a professor of communication, you're exposed to so many positive isms and negative isms. What that means there is racism, there's classism, there's ethnocentrism, there is sexism, and I consider the negative isms. So girl-child education is, to me, sexism at its best. And to me, I believe it falls under the category of what I call idiotic fallacy or myth. Either fallacy or myth,
okay,
or just outright selfish or ignorant.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And what do I mean by fallacy? There are some things that are not very true when it comes to girls. And I think the impression that we have is based on culture, that a girl cannot be this, a girl cannot be that. But I think just like we had myth about twins, killing of the twins, until we realized that it is not true. A myth about surrounding a woman being responsible for having a boy child, when actually science tells us that a woman is not responsible for the sex of a child. And so to me, it falls under that fallacy, that myth as well. When it comes to girl-child education in Nigeria, I do understand that we have a very long way to go, including in our state. Okay. In spite of the fact that the government is doing quite a lot.
Okay, let me get you on that.
Yeah.
There are provisions by the Constitution, like what you had in the 2004 Child Rights Act, that every child is entitled to free and compulsory education, at least the first 9 years, that's primary, and then to the junior secondary. How well is that going down here in this country? Because we know the provisions are there, but yet we still have more children, especially girl child, drop out of school.
One of the things that I say all the time, that you can have laws, but the implementation of the law is a problem. Yeah. When we talk about gender, girl-child education, gender is a construct. Okay. Society always creates a situation where, when it comes to girl-child education, where there's a limit to power to or power over. That means when it comes to girl-child education, there's a limitation on power to gain access to education, either power to or power over. And so in the situation here in the state, there's a need for collaboration. There's a need for information. There's a need for the parents to be educated, because again, it's a construct. And I believe that given where we are today in this side, look at you, beautiful ladies, what you've achieved, what you've done, and this is all over the world. I do understand that even advanced society, women are held back. Okay. But one thing here is having the laws, which is wonderful. But again, I think hands has to be on deck for the implementation, of these laws.
Okay. Now, let's move away a little from Nigeria. We thank God so much for, blessing Nigeria. We don't have so much natural disasters. But you get to see countries who, have conflicts and disasters, and these children are displaced. Now, how well will these kind of children, especially the girl child, have access to education, quality education?
I believe that I often say that that a good education is really not about what you cover as a teacher or as a facilitator of knowledge. A good education is not about what you cover from one term to the other, from one chapter to the other. A good education, in my opinion, is based on what you uncover. And so anybody can uncover something that can impact the life of a child. That means, again, in mentoring, assigning mentors. We have women that are with very high degree of intellection. We have women in every category of life. We have women that are accountants, doctors, pharmacists, and the list goes on. And the access starts, from, again, mentorship. Because I believe that life is about mentorship. It's about strategy. It's about mentorship. And to segue again into the access, I think it's a matter of communication. I happen to be a professor of communication, and I always make a distinction between communication and communications.
Okay. What's that distinction?
The distinction is that when we talk about communication with an N, it's the study of human behavior. It's the study of how is the process of the exciting a meaning in the mind of someone else, either through verbal or non-verbal means. Communications is what you guys are doing at the media. Any message that goes through a device or being disseminated, that's communications. So I'm a professor of communication with an N, or a behavioral scientist, social scientist.
Okay, now it's in the singular and the plural. Communication and communications.
Yes, communication is the study of human behavior.
Yeah, I get it.
Okay.
Like the difference is in the S.
Difference more than the S. The difference is in the in the medium.
In the medium.
In the medium, because we believe that again the medium is the message. So the difference in so if I'm using a cell phone to disseminate message, that's communications. If I'm on the computer, that's communication. Social media, that's communications. But if I understand perception, listening is part of communication. Perception is part of communication. Barriers is part of communication. And understanding how, and what does that really mean? Very quickly, it really means that that there is that the process is understood. Now, again, not to be overly professorial here.
Okay. Okay, go on.
And so when we talk about, we put emphasis on what doesn't matter when it comes to communication. Most times we put emphasis on communications, not communication. That means to be effective in conveying the message to the audience, to be effective in improving girl-child education. Okay. There's a need to understand the elements of the communication process.
Okay, now, still, because you are a lecturer, now let's talk about in the school system.
Okay.
How well can, female teachers influence girl children, like at girl child education? We have male teachers, we have female teachers. In your, field of study and your years of learning and, mentoring and teaching others, what would you say is the impact female teachers hold in educating the girl child?
Well, a very good question. Thanks for that. That's a very good question. I hope you have time.
Go on, shoot.
Yeah, we all, as an educator, as a teacher, I believe studies show that when if the children like you, they will learn from you. They're from you, and they are. We also know that there are different types of students. Having taught for over 3 decades, I put my students into 3 categories. You have the one that the pride and joy of a teacher. You have the sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Then you have the never, the one that they never do anything. Now, I think the work of a teacher, male or female, is to be able, to reach all the students. Now, the female teacher, of course, the female teacher has an insurmountable impact, on a child. There's one of the strategies in classroom management that we call unconditional positive regards. That means, looking beyond, just beyond teaching. Looking beyond teaching, taking interest just beyond, beyond. As simple as asking the child, how was your weekend? What is your family structure? How are things? Or would you like candy? And a teacher, female or male, needs to understand how to create an affinity, with the child. And it doesn't cost much. Something may be as simple as volunteering, because to me, again, it's about mentorship. It's about mentorship. And of course, I believe in setting expectations. Teachers must set expectations, but also they have to be able to create that affinity. And last but not the very least, female teachers, they have something in common, with the girls, of course. And there is a need, in my years of teaching, there's a need for every teacher to understand typology, to understand personality,
Okay, let me quickly ask you this. Do you feel, in your opinion, that the Nigerian system of education is favorable for girl child?
Well, I think we are making strides. There are issues, as there are, everywhere else. But I think we are making strides. I mean, looking at the girl child education issue in the state, parents are also responsible. Okay. One, because we have parents that are not literate. We have parents that are sending their children to go and be nannies, and be house help. And then it leads to trafficking. The free education is important, but I think we need to put our money where our mouth is. There are girls in every family. Okay, and there is a need. Lawmakers, teachers, stakeholders, business owners, they need to put a special emphasis in implementation, in providing services, and providing access, in mentoring. You're going to hear me say mentoring almost 200 times, because life is about mentorship. Yeah,
talking about mentorship, would you recommend in the States, they have what is called homeschool. Now, we have seen issues facing us as Africans, as Nigerians, where a lot of times the girl child, like you said, the parents send them for nannies and all of that. Do you think if Nigerians introduce homeschool, it will help curb education of girl children, stop girl children from dropping out of school, if we have homeschools implemented in Nigeria?
I don't think that homeschool is really the answer, because it is something that just like we have virtual schools now because of the post-pandemic. When you have homeschool, personally, there's a social emotional component of education that's missing. For example, I've taught virtually for the past one year, and my kids were screaming to go back to school, despite all the fact that the convenience, of being at home. The homeschool is good, but the children need that social interaction, the social emotional component is always missing. So homeschool is really not a panacea. We have homeschools. In the U.S., and it is not the reason that girl child do well. It will be a combination. We said that it takes a village to raise a child, so it has to be a collaborative effort. We have to again look at the issues from a very inductive point of view. We also have to take a special interest, because many times it's always somebody else until it happens to you. I was talking about even again a different subject about diversity. We talk about diversity, diversity of the workforce. We need to understand what it takes to have a cross-cultural competence. We need to develop a cross-cultural competence, and because I am as different as you, not like you, okay. And we also need to celebrate and encourage the young people beyond homeschool.
Okay. Now you talked about culture, like social cultural stuff. Now let me ask you, can you describe the impacts of social cultural beliefs and religions on the attitudes, on children, on the girl child education? We have a lot of culture maybe who do not believe that the girl child needs to really go to school, and there are religions in this country, in this world right now, who do not really place value on girl child education. Now, can you describe what impact that has on the girl child?
It has insurmountable, culture has insurmountable impact on girl child education, because we've been socialized. Again, gender is a construct. If you look at the last 40 years, feminists have tried to answer the question when it comes to girl child education. Where are women in every situation, if there are women present at all? And culture, once you are limited in knowledge, once you are sold a particular bill of goods, once you are told that if you do this, this would happen, so you give into fear. So our culture over the years, which is based on certain myth, like I said earlier, we grew up imbibing the concept of different myths, things that were not true. Things that were not true, misconceptions, the different perceptions, which is based on culture. And I think when you look at perception, how we perceive things from a cultural perspective, we perceive things in three ways. We perceive things by organization, by selection, by interpretation. What does that mean? We tend, by interpretation, we look at things from one perspective, from one prism. It's like wearing a sunglass that is green. You ask somebody, what is the weather today? They see green. So that's perception based on interpretation, or schematics that is stored in our mind. We perceive things by selection. Whatever stands out, we feel that that is good. Whatever stimulates us visually, we think that is good. Again, these are some of the myths that are perceptually built into what was sold to us, or the script that was written over the years, and we still use that script in dealing with girls child education. So culture plays a big part, and I think that's where communication comes in. That's where being able to convey, being able to share opinion. That's why being able to look at best practices and look at different models comes in. Yes, culture plays a very big part. And of course we know that every culture is dynamic. There are things that are good about some culture. That's things that we need to unravel. There are things that are really not true. There are things that are myths.
Now let's look at the northern part of Nigeria. We still see girl-child marriage. In fact, let me call it child marriage, still enforced today. Now, what are those what are those measures that we can call an intervention? What are those intervention measures that should be implemented to curb this menace? Because it's not going down well. The girl child education is very important, but yet we still see across Nigeria, especially the northern part of this Nigeria, we still see girl-child marriage. What are those measures that should be taken into practice to curb this menace?
Yep, I believe me, I truly am of the strong opinion that education is the fulcrum, for change. And it has to start, from the mosque. From the mosque, it has to start, from school. There's a need, for mass literacy. There's a need for the parents to be educated. There's a need, and it has to start from the opinion leaders, start from the imams, down, and trickle down. I've read so much about the girl child education, the issues in northern part of Nigeria, and I think there's also a need for the women that are in high echelons, those that have been able to that have the capacity, to start to engage not only the policymakers, engage their leaders, their opinion leaders, the church leaders, and in a very not in a threatening way, but there's a need, for that engagement, dialogue to begin. And of course, communication is the fulcrum for change, and the point becomes, how do you do that? How do you do that? When we look at messages, in marketing, advertising, when you design a message, you design a message either by using fear or a slice of life or unique appeal. But when a life of a child, a child is valuable, and I think the message has to be such that has value. The value need to be placed, because again, I have thank God for my daughters. I have an occupational therapist, I have a nutritionist, and they all love that. And so the myth of saying, oh, we cannot send a girl child, when there was an option of if you send a boy to school or a girl, there was always a boy. But we've seen how the stride that women have made all over the world.
Yeah, that's right there. You have a point there. You talked about the strides that people are making around the world in sending girl child to school, but there's still the threats, because lots of girl child are being dropped out of school. So we'll take a look at that after this time. I will play the report again for you, and when we return, we'll continue on the conversation. Please stay with us.
Education is an activity that imparts knowledge or skill. Education gives us knowledge